Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I would like to start by saying I have absolutely nothing to declare but my recent Kabul trip to Israel and the Palestine territories, countries I've been visiting since the first Gulf War. Now, back then, Palestinian Democrats warned of the rise of fundamentalist Hamas. They argued that if Israel failed to support an independent Palestinian state, extremism would rise, the centre ground would lose, and peace would be harder to attain. In my previous role as a journalist, I interviewed Hanan Ashrawi and the late great Edward Said, and made a series of very reasonable demands. Said spoke of reconciliation and denounced the use of violent rhetoric. Both wanted to see a homeland for the Palestinian people and acknowledgement of the grave injustices committed towards them, as we know so many driven from their homes and into refugee camps when Israel was created. And crucially, both wanted to see an assurance that Israeli territorial expansion would end. When I first visited Israel and Palestine, the settler population in the West Bank and East Jerusalem was around 200,000. Today, 20 years later, there are more than 600,000 settlers. Now, people come from all across the world to live in Israel, and for lots of reasons. But those seeking a better life in the illegal settlements gain it, alas, by the appropriation of Palestinian land and homes. And while Palestinian farmland is barren and dry, many settlements have swimming pools with illegally funnelled water. Illegal settlers consume 6 to 10 times more water per head than the Palestinians. And Israel's policy of creating facts on the ground is brutal and determined to establish so many settlements on the West Bank that a contiguous Palestinian state becomes impossible. We must consider the consequences of this for Israel itself. If a viable two-state solution dies and Palestine is subsumed into a greater Israel stretching from the Mediterranean to the Dead Sea, what happens to the 5 to 6 million Palestinians in the Jewish state with no government of their own? You know, an abiding memory of my first trip to Israel and Palestine was taking tea in a refugee camp. Some of the elders got out their British Mandate of Palestine house deeds and, poignantly, keys to long-appropriated houses. They told me that they trusted British honour and British law and asked why we remained so silent in the face of injustice. It was Said who put it best for me. "Can you explain to me," he asked, "why, because of the evil committed against innocents in Europe 60 years ago, you in the West salve your consciences by turning a blind eye to the injustice of my family's expulsion from our home to provide compensation for people in whose oppression we played no part?" This goes to the heart of the issue. We cannot turn a blind eye to theft any longer. We cannot allow bitterness to pass to another generation.